Prada L'homme versus Prada L'homme Intense, which one is the best? This is a comparison I've sort of in a way stayed away from doing because I knew this would be an incredibly tough one to choose. These two are definitely among some of the very best powdery fragrances ever made. And the choice is basically between a fantastic dose of powdery freshness against what I think is a sort of a warmer kind of powderiness with a really seductive dose of tonka. Same sort of a DNA, but definitely different vibes and definitely a bit different scent-wise. So I'm gonna go through what they smell like and also compare them when it comes to usage, performance, mass appeal and more. And by the end of this video, you are going to know everything about these two and which I think is the best. In Prada L'homme, we have iris, neroli, pepper, violet, geranium, amber, cedar and patchouli. In L'homme Intense, we have iris, amber, patchouli, tonka bean, leather and sandalwood. So let's start with the OG and I'm gonna spray it on my left hand. Okay, I've always been blown away by the opening. This is quite intensely fresh, but if you compare it to a lot of other sort of fresh scents, it definitely has a bit of uniqueness. The neroli pops with its floral and slightly sort of a sweet freshness. You definitely have an added kind of freshness, sort of a soft freshness from the pepper, and the iris is right there in the opening with a sort of a lighter kind of powdery freshness. So neroli, iris and pepper, and those three notes may not sound like a big deal, but the iris here definitely pulls this in a different direction compared to most other sort of fresh scents. I do enjoy L'homme from the opening through to the dry down, but I gotta be honest, the opening to me with its sort of a unique kind of powdery freshness is intoxicating. I do not think this is a simple kind of freshness. This wraps me in this luxurious kind of powdery freshness. It's definitely powdery, but the powderiness here and the overall sort of a composition is airy and has a softness to it that I think is fantastic. I know some feel this is sort of a lipsticky, but to me it's really not. So let's move on to the opening of the Intense and I'm gonna spray it on my right hand. Right away there's a difference. I feel that L'homme Intense doesn't have the brightness and freshness that the original L'homme has. L'homme Intense straight away goes into the kind of powderiness that, at least to my nose, is sort of darker, a bit richer and less fresh. And pretty much right away you get a soft kind of woodiness in the background and a hint of something sweet in the opening as well. So L'homme is all about freshness and powderiness, whereas L'homme Intense goes into a more sort of a darker kind of powderiness together with a bit of woodiness. So I'm gonna get to the vibe in a second, but right away, different vibes for sure. This is fresh in a vibrant way, whereas Prada L'homme Intense pretty much right away goes in a slightly more sort of elegant and in a way sort of a romantic direction. The dry down is where L'homme's woodiness starts to come through more and more, and to me the dry down is powdery in a sort of a light and fresh way and softly woody. The woodiness in Prada L'homme is definitely prominent, but to me it's prominent but in a sort of a light way. There's absolutely nothing heavy, too deep or too intense about Prada L'homme. There's a fantastic sort of a creamy feel to the dry down and it's slightly soapy in the dry down. So in a nutshell, freshness, like a nuanced kind of freshness. You get a bit of floral freshness, a bit of spicy freshness and an airy kind of powderiness. And it's woody with a creamy feel to it and a slight hint of soapiness. The dry down of L'homme Intense is so different. I mean, you can feel the sort of a Prada L'homme DNA going through the Intense as well. However, this goes in a darker, definitely a bit sort of a warmer direction. It's powdery for sure, but not powdery fresh like L'homme. This has a darker kind of powderiness to it. There's a sort of a richness and a bit sort of a more dense kind of powderiness to Prada L'homme Intense. This also has a very noticeable dose of woodiness, a creamy kind of woodiness in the dry down. It has a soft hint of leather to it, and you have the tonka pushing through in the dry down, giving the whole thing what I think is a really nice dose of sexy sweetness. So powdery, creamy, smooth sandalwood, sexy sweet vanilla with a bit of warmth to it, and a bit of soft leather. Both of these have amber in them, but I do feel that part is amped up in Prada L'homme Intense. The OG has a bit of it in the drawdown, but I do feel that part is toned down in here. So comparing them, when it comes to the vibe, I do feel that both of these have quite an elegant and classy feel to it. I mean, the Prada L'homme DNA, at least to me, is quite a classy one. However, I do feel that this has a slightly more sort of a casual kind of elegance and classiness to it, but the Intense in a way has a sort of a more romantic or sensual or sexy vibe to it. But with that said, I do feel there's definitely a bit of sexiness to L'homme as well. Comparing the performance of the two, I'm rating the performance of the original L'homme 6.5 when it comes to projection and 7.5 when it comes to longevity, and Prada L'homme Intense 7 for projection and 7.5 for longevity. So L'homme Intense has better performance, but I don't feel there's a massive difference between the two. That's on my skin. I know some feel that the L'homme Intense has beast mode performance and that the OG is super weak. Let me know your thoughts on the performance of these two in the comments. When it comes to compliments and mass appeal, both are definitely, in my wearing experience of them, compliment getters. I mean, L'homme is extremely likable, and I received a ton of compliments for L'homme Intense as well. But I received more sort of a casual kind of compliments with L'homme, and definitely more sort of a romantic compliments with L'homme Intense. But yeah, when it comes to compliments for powder fragrances, both of these are definitely compliment getters. When it comes to usage, so like seasons and occasions, I do feel that L'homme is pretty much the perfect powder fragrance that you can use throughout the year to pretty much any occasion. This to me is a great everyday kind of fragrance. Work, school, running errands, going out, grabbing a coffee, whatever, this one just works. And while I do use L'homme Intense throughout the year, this is definitely the one I reach for more during spring, summer nights, fall and winter. When it comes to these two and usage, this is more about the mood I'm in. So this, when I crave an epic dose of powder freshness, L'homme Intense when I want that L'homme DNA, but in a sort of a darker and in a way sort of a sexier way. OG, casual, sort of a everyday use. And this is definitely something I think about when it comes to going out or date nights. So who are these for? I think the sort of a baseline here is that you should know that you enjoy powder fragrances. The OG L'homme, if you want powderiness together with freshness and a bit of soft woodiness. L'homme Intense, if you want powderiness with a more intense dose of woodiness in a sort of a darker blend together with a bit of sweet vanilla. Stay away if you don't like powder fragrances. So if you're choosing between these, maybe think like I do when it comes to usage. How are you going to use them? Do you want something that you can wear every day that works to pretty much any occasion that is more fresh and powdery? Then it's Prada L'homme. If you want something that is sort of a darker, more woody, more sweet, then it's definitely L'homme Intense. So I'm not going to talk about alternatives in this video. However, I am going to link to my best powder fragrances video below and in the description. Make sure you check that video out because both of these are in that video and there are a ton of alternatives in that video. So it's time for me to choose between these two. If I could only choose one of these, which one would I choose and why? So here's the thing. I've been through multiple bottles of the OG Prada L'homme and I had backup bottles of Prada L'homme Intense mostly because this was supposed to have been discontinued a few years back. So yeah, I loved it so much so I ended up buying backup bottles of it. However, it was not discontinued. So I absolutely love both. And here's when it gets so tricky. The opening of the OG is definitely the one I prefer over the opening of Prada L'homme Intense. This gives me a different kind of fresh vibe if I compare it to my other more sort of powdery freshies. L'homme to me is a luxurious powdery freshness, but here's the thing, the dry down of L'homme Intense is something I prefer or enjoy more than the dry down of the OG L'homme. So this definitely shines the most during sort of opening and the mids. The dry down is where this thing still smells fantastic, but I do feel it loses some of that fresh magic in the dry down. The L'homme Intense is less impressive in the opening, but once it hits the dry down and the tonka starts pushing through and the woodiness of it grows in intensity and becomes this sort of a creamy, vanillic, softly leathery and quite ambery blend, that's when Prada L'homme Intense shines the most. So in a way, I guess I would have loved for a combination of these where I would get the opening of this and the dry down of this. But if I would choose, and this is super hard, I don't know. I mean, if you look at how I'm using these two, I've been through more bottles and I've actually put more of a dent to Prada L'homme than Prada L'homme Intense. But even so, I'm gonna say that I'm gonna go with Prada L'homme Intense as my absolute favorite. So it's my favorite, but definitely not by much. Now, this is what I want to hear from you. If you had to choose between these two, which would you choose? What are your thoughts on these? Do you think both are great? Do you hate the one? Do you love the other one? Let me know in the comments. Please drop a like and subscribe for more. Make sure you check out my Prada L'homme review over there, and I'll see you in the next one.